if you're in the market or just are interested in real estate, you may be wondering, are we headed toward another 2008 real estate crash? I'm Amanda Sarnes, and this is my husband, Manny Sarnes, and we've been married to the market longer than we've been married to each other, and we've actually been doing real estate here in Florida for 20 years. Now, Manny, I mean, we've had inflated prices, we've had bidding wars, we've had investors flooding the market. Gosh, now we even have a hurricane to boot. I mean, there's a lot of this reflection that is eerily similar to the market that we experienced in 2008. And, you know, the question that I always get, especially this past year, but definitely now, this week more than ever, do you think that we're headed toward another 2008 real estate crash?
So, you know, we've actually done videos on the past about this, you know, probably about 6 months ago. So it's kind of funny to see some of the predictions 6 months ago and then kind of fast forward to today. But you know, there are a lot of similarities between the market we see now and what we saw back in 2008, you know, and we'll dig into that a little deeper. But initially, most of it, I think, Amanda, is superficial. Most of what you're seeing is some superficial things, like it feels a lot like 2008,
well,
you know?
Because it does. I mean, if we just look at what has happened, it literally does. And even as early as Monday of this week, you know, there's a lot of these kind of like doomsday prepper scenario things coming out that this is the end of times here, and the delusion that is Florida.
But if you calm down, we always talk about the best professionals in every industry, absolutely in real estate, because it's such an emotional business. The real professionals have the ability to not lead by emotion and to actually dig into some of the statistics. And so we're going to go over some of the statistics on why I believe this is nothing near what we saw in 2008. We could have some market corrections. You know, that's different than a crash. Let's consider a crash. A market crash would be possibly, you know, an entire state or region losing more than 10% of the value it once had.
Right. I mean, it would definitely have to be, a lot of the new predictions now are 31%.
Yeah,
that would be a crash.
That would be, and I'm not saying about pockets. There are always going to be pockets of real estate that overvalue over time. I'm not talking about little pockets of Florida or little pockets of the country. I'm talking about entire states and entire regions that see over 10%. That would be a crash. Anything less than 10% in an area I would consider a correction, right? Because you can have some small market corrections. Somebody probably isn't going to not buy real estate because the market's going to dip 2 to 5% sometime in the next year. You know, that's probably not stopping them from buying real estate because of, again, the positives that you benefit from it. So let's talk about maybe what we saw in 2008, you know, and why it was so bad. You and I were both in real estate and mortgages.
And it was so bad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to sell short sales again, Manny.
Yeah, I really don't want to. I don't want to wait for short sales to be approved. I don't want to have to finance buyers for 6 months as short sales get approved. So let's dig into that.
So what is a short sale? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to let you go into short sales, and then I'm going to go into some of the differences of what we saw in the financing realm back in 2008.
Okay, sure. So a short sale is essentially exactly what it says. It's selling your home lower or shorter than what you owe on it. And that was done back in 2008 because the vast majority of people that were in that predicament were so upside down on their value. That's why they had to do that.
They didn't have another option, right?
They really didn't have another option.
Yeah. So on the financing end, why did Amanda have to do a short sale? Well, on the financing end, what we were doing back in 2005, you know, and to be clear, loan officers in 2005 were selling the mortgages that big banks like Countrywide or Wachovia, who are no longer with us today for obvious reasons, we were just selling the mortgages that they actually had available. So what we were doing is we were doing what was called NINAs and CISAs. A CISA would be a stated income stated asset. You didn't document any of your income, or a NINA, a no income, no asset.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, let's give somebody $500,000 and not verify anything about them other than the fact that you're a U.S. citizen and that they have a credit score.
Right. Now,
what could go wrong?
Listen, I get it. What could go wrong? Well, it did. We saw it was 2008. But the intention behind those programs was not necessarily automatically predatory lending. It was really a lot of government programs that wanted to incentivize homeownership in
Correct.
America. So the belief behind it I understand where it was coming from, but hindsight is so 2020.
Yeah, the reason that they came along was because we believe, the industry believed that homeownership is good for everybody, and so as many people that can buy homes as possible. But what they didn't realize, and if they did, it was bad information. Was that obviously people have to be able to make a mortgage payment, and so what was happening with a stated income or stated asset or no income, no asset loan is I was doing 100% financing on people that I did not know exactly how much income they could do. So they had no asset into the game or no skin into the game.
Right.
We didn't know how much money they really made in their job. Right. And so the combination of these two things.
It sounds crazy. Like why
horrible combination, right? And so what happened is to add to this, the nail in the coffin was towards 2006, and as we got into later into 2006, we started doing everything in an adjustable rate mortgage as well. Why? Because the rates were even cheaper. So we were talking about higher rates today. I was doing fixed rates in the 7s, and people loved them back then.
Right.
We could do adjustable rates in the 5s. And so we were doing a no income verification loan with no money down and an adjustable rate mortgage. Well,
when you say we, you mean lenders,
the industry
in general across America.
Yeah, every loan. I mean, I didn't do a 30-year fixed for about 4 years.
Wow.
Because the clients weren't asking for them. Again, I was in my 20s. I didn't know, I couldn't think 30 years. Now, some years later, I'm better educated. The whole industry is better educated. But what happens is when we're giving people, we're not verifying income, we're doing 100% financing, and then we're putting in an adjustable rate mortgage. These are what we would call 2-year and 3-year ARMs. They're fixed for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Well, about 2008, half the country's rates were adjusting. And so the property values increased, meaning taxes went up, right? Insurance naturally goes up. And then the rates were adjusting after the adjustable rate mortgage period ended. And so when you had a third of the country's mortgage payment go up by about 30%, they had no skin in the game. They had no down payment into the home. So what they started doing was not making payments. And during that, once it started happening at a national level, what they started doing is they started saying, okay, well, I've got all this equity in my home, because the equity back then was booming just like it did in 2020, 2021, 2022. That's one of those similarities people are seeing. And so what they were doing is they were doing what's called strategic default. And they said, hey, listen, realtor, sell my home for me. And then as more and more people were selling, supply and demand, there were too many listings on the market and not enough buyers to buy them. The buyers were negotiating the prices down. And what started happening was the buyer the seller could then no longer sell the home for what they owed on the mortgage, because we gave them 100% financing. Right. So they helped them buy a $400,000 house. They owed $400,000, and maybe it went up to $450,000. But then when all those sellers hit the market, it dropped down to $400,000. They would go to a realtor like Amanda and say, "Can you sell my house? I owe $400,000." But Amanda would say, "But it's only worth $300,000. I can only sell it for $300,000."
Right.
Thus, that's when you had to short sell them.
Right, and that was a whole lesson in humility itself. Just even working short sales back then, and believe me, I did a ton of them. And you had to even kind of teach nobody had done it before. So you had to even teach the banks that were doing them. It would be so frustrating. I remember calling, I don't know, Bank of America, for instance, was one of the biggies. And you would be like, do you departments work in the same place? So
yeah,
like, are you even communicating? So I learned how to take very, very detailed notes and timestamp every conversation. And
talk about being underpaid as a realtor.
Oh, Lord God. I mean, it was tough.
6 months or so, right, for a transaction sometimes.
Most of it, yeah, most of the time. And then there were times that you would do everything right, and after 6 months, something would happen. They would deny it, which was bananas. But we you bob and weave, you learn to evolve in this business, and we got smarter, and obviously negotiated those terms, before the listings a lot of times. So I just don't want to do that again. Is that where we're headed, Manny? Please.
No. So remember what I said was the similarities was the rapid appreciation, what we see now, what we saw then. Another potential similarity is that we were seeing some rates raising, which is we are obviously seeing now. And then the last similarity is that we were seeing some economy. So the economy was going from red hot and it was cooling down, and so that's happening now as well. But what we didn't have, the major difference is when I put somebody in a mortgage today, they have a down payment. I verified income. I probably verified their income 6 different ways till Sunday. I've got AI that helps me verify income. So if the buyer tries to lie about their income.
You know what? That's something that we don't ever really think about talking about because, I know anytime that somebody has bought a house or is buying a house with us that has not bought a house since before 2008, they feel like they're getting interrogated.
Yeah.
Because they don't realize that one of the great things that came out of the crash was the Dodd-Frank Act, right?
Yeah. So the Dodd-Frank Act, which was passed in 2012, created CFPB and all these changes that force what, I won't go into the details.
But they regulate lending so heavily
They gave us what was called QM, and my loan officer friends and people in financing, we love and hate QM, but it really does do some things to protect the consumer, protect from predatory lending. It stops lenders from making too much money per transaction. It ensures that we've done our due diligence to make sure that the consumer has the ability to repay. Very, very important, right?
Honestly, why wasn't that a thing before?
Again, they were trying to help people experience homeownership. So the biggest difference between today and what we saw in 2008 is that people are on 98% of my clients are on a 30-year or 15-year fixed rate mortgage. So their mortgage payments will not move.
Right, they're the same. And
so that's huge.
Their rates are pretty low.
Right? A lot of, almost the whole country refinanced their interest rates under 3%. And so people are sitting on very, very low interest rates. And they have down payment into the home. So skin in the game is the last piece. So we verified income, they're sitting on very good, solid fixed rate mortgages, and the last piece is they've invested some of their hard earned money into the home. These are three things we were not doing in 2008. And the three things that I don't believe we will see any major crashes. If we see crashes in sectors of the market, it will not be due to the mortgage aspect of it. These are people, it could be due to some economic things, people losing jobs. This is going to happen. Right. These kind of things could happen. So, Amanda, that's the first, and that's what happened in 2008 and why we got to where we were. Let's talk about maybe some of the data that I'm looking at to make, on top of just the mortgages, that would make me believe that we're not going to see a crash. We're in Florida. So most of what we're talking about, I can't talk about what's going to happen in Idaho or in Maine or New York.
Right.
We've done real estate mortgages in Florida for 20 years. And so I'm going to talk about specifically Florida right now.
All right, talk numbers. Come on.
Yeah, so let me get boring, and maybe Amanda can find a way to put some of these graphs on the video here.
I'll figure it out.
So the first thing we want to look at is where are people moving from and where are they moving to right now? So right now, if we're going to go some stats, let me grab my cheat sheet here. So right now, the top 5 places, that people are moving, the top 5 places that people are moving out of is California, New York, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. They're moving from those states. Could those states see some problems? Yeah, they already had people moving out before we got into what we would consider maybe a recession right now. So those states might see some problems.
Right.
Where are they moving to? Texas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia.
In that order?
In that order.
Huh.
So those are, and that information is all coming from Forbes magazine. In 2022, the top 5 places people are moving from and to. So let's focus on the number 2 place people have moved to in the country, and that is Florida. Okay? Why is it that people move to Florida, right? Well, the first thing is we've got beautiful weather.
It's amazing here.
Right?
It's paradise.
We've got beaches in the sun.
All year round. You can be outside.
Outdoor, we've got wonderful fishing.
No state tax. Gotta love that.
That's a huge thing, no state taxes.
Yeah.
Businesses are coming here in droves because it's easier to hire people here.
Our governor is pretty great.
Yeah, we won't get into a political statement, but DeSantis has done a phenomenal job through another big one, COVID. Relatively speaking, through the other 50 states. We were open. We were open for business for most of COVID. And matter of fact, in the real estate mortgage industry, we might have shut down for a couple days.
I think I worked more during COVID than I ever did in my entire life.
So if you look at these things, these are why people are moving to Florida. Let's dig into another thing of why I believe Florida might be slightly insulated from a market crash, maybe some crashes, but not a crash. And that is, let's talk about the median home prices per state. So Florida is the number 2 state people are moving to. It's the number 18th state on median home prices, right?
Wow.
So you've got the homes in the median home price in the state of Florida is in the low 400s. There are states in front of us with higher median home prices. This is based through Zillow, okay? Like Utah, Oregon, Idaho, Washington State. These are all beautiful places to live. I have family in Washington State, beautiful place. But let's be honest, they're not Florida. People are not moving to these states in droves. So if you look at the median home prices and home affordability, a place like Florida is very affordable, number 18th. That means there are 17 other states where homes are more expensive.
Right. I feel like we're kind of caught up a little bit to the rest
We
of
have.
the country.
We
over the past
really
few
did.
Years.
3 years ago, we were closer to 22, I believe.
Right.
So we were closer in the 20s. So, we talk about mortgages are different. Another thing that's different is Florida has some very affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. All right, Manny, I know you got some numbers on your sheet that are going to give us even more definitive stats.
Yeah, so let's dig into what we call the cost of living index. Now, the cost of living index is, it basically allows you to compare how much it costs in one area of the country compared to another. And they break it down by states, and we get this data from worldpopulationreview.com. Tons of good data there. So the state of Florida for cost of living is 24 out of 50. So we're the 24th cheapest state, or 26th most expensive state. We're right in the middle of the pack, right? So again, for such a beautiful place to live, for the number 2 place in the country that everybody's moving to, we basically are right in the middle of the pack on what it costs to live here. So cost of things like a loaf of bread, a gallon of gas, these things are right in the middle. So we're 18th as far as how, home prices, 17 places are more expensive to live. And there are 23 other places that it's more expensive to actually live as far as what it costs to buy everyday goods.
Right.
These are 2 things that bode very, very well for people continuing to move to Florida.
Correct. Okay. So what you're saying is it's affordable to live here, and the housing prices are really affordable, especially compared to some of the other places in the country.
Sure.
And yet we're the number 2 location to move to in America.
Correct.
So that's why you're feeling very good that it's not going to be that perfect storm like it was in 2008.
If you dig into the actual data, Florida is situated very, very well to weather this storm. So we talked about some of the similarities in 2008. Let's talk about what's happening right now that people are thinking, oh my goodness, that are different, that may be worse than what we saw in 2008, but don't offset anything too much. So the first off, we have inflation. We had some inflation in 2008, but not like we have now. Right. Inflation is at a 40-year high. Inflation, what is it for my layman out there? That's when you have too much money chasing too few goods, right? And what that occurs is then the cost of those goods go up. So as that happens, your dollar stretches less and less far. When that occurs, we do have some economic strife in the marketplace. Now, what our economy has done to help slow down that inflation, is we have the interest rates have started to rise on the mortgages, right? So 30-year fixed and 15-year fixed mortgages, the rates are rising. That's to cool off the housing market, right? To cool off inflation.
And we needed it because it was insane.
Well, you can't
over the
have
past 2 years.
You can't have that type of an appreciation for too long.
It was like a supermarket sweep. You know that?
Yeah.
Watch that in the 80s.
And everybody's pushing the cart.
Yes. It was seriously like that.
So, Amanda, I don't believe we're in the market anymore where we're going to be, buyers are going to be buying homes sight unseen anymore, right? Like that. We're kind of getting away from that.
I would definitely say that a correction has already begun. We are certainly leveling out, which is such a welcome change, not only to the industry and the professionals, but to the emotion that a buyer or seller might have in the experience. I mean, it had definitely, I almost think that there might be like a side neuroses for what people have experienced in the real estate market the past 2.5 years.
Well, for my friends, my loan officers and realtors, title agents, home inspectors, appraisers, all of us in the real estate industry who have been in this business less than 5 years, you don't really even know what a buyer's market looks like.
Right.
And so when the market shifts, and this is the 4th shifting of a market Amanda and I have gone through, it does scare people. And it does shift the marketplace, and it does take certain parts of the country, and you can see some small crashes. Mm-hmm. But we just talked about the reasons why Florida is different. So as we see these interest rates start to rise into the 6s and 7s and potentially 8s, that is going to cool off the real estate market. Mm-hmm. That necessarily doesn't stop people from moving to Florida, because with that also is happening is rents are raising.
Well, and to that point, honestly, like it's still low. I mean, again, the last crash, we were still having rates in the 6s and 7s, and everybody was fine with them. And everything is raised. The income is raised. A lot of things have raised. We're not that far off, but what we are not is, the 2 and 3%, which made it so crazy easy
Yeah.
to be in real estate. But that was, again, that was not necessarily the best thing. But what it did is it did allow for a lot of people to get into some really, really low fixed interest rates, which is, to me, the number one reason why we will not see a housing bubble crash. Because before, in 2008, people were forced. Like, they didn't have an option. They didn't
Correct.
have a choice. Well, now, if you're sitting on like a 3% or a 3.25 rate, you're like, that's basically free money. So you're going to like keep your home, especially knowing that your alternative is renting something
That's
way
more.
more expensive.
Yeah. So if you want to look at cost of rent, that's at an all-time high too. So when you look at what your other options are, rent right now is not. Now listen, there are a couple of factors that we don't know. This could change.
We don't have a crystal ball.
Correct. You have things we used to call a shadow inventory. Right now, that's a lot of investors have come into markets, right, and purchased a lot of homes cash.
We'll be talking about shadow inventory.
So we don't know how that gets pumped into the market and can make some changes, right? We don't know how far the rates are going to go up. If rates hit 12%, it could grind a lot more to a halt if they just stop at 8%. But we've discussed some things today using sound data, using our experience from 2008, 2012, 2016, 2022. We don't believe there is going to be a crash in the state of Florida. Market corrections in certain pockets. Yes, you had Ian.
Happening.
Yeah, you had Ian that hit Southwest Florida pretty hard. Maybe you could see some parts of Southwest Florida have some market corrections, maybe even some small crashes, depending on how those economies are affected by that hurricane. But Florida as a whole, because in 2008, remember, we had adjustable rate mortgages that were done with no income verification, mortgages that were done with no asset verification, and mortgages done with no down payments. And when the adjustable rate mortgages came due and they changed and they raised the payments, people started to default. We won't have that this time. Also, people were not moving to Florida in droves like they are now.
Right.
That's not going to stop. We still have many, many people moving here. The people are moving here. One thing we didn't touch on, which is a great point, is going to be that people can work remotely now.
Yeah.
So it used to be that, you had to have all this, all these jobs moving to Florida with the people, but you don't now. You can actually we have so many, about 20% of my applicants applying for new mortgages today in the state of Florida do not have a job that is commuted to.
Right.
They have a job that they work from home.
A lot of Zoomers.
That's completely different than anything we had in 2008.
Right. And then, what we did not have for the past decade was a lot of building. So we were already underserved, and I think nationwide, actually, it was a little underserved as far as building goes. So the inventory, again, it's just not an influx of inventory. So that's another reason why.
That's a good point. I mean, the builders are in a prime position to build in the state of Florida, and I do believe people will continue to move here. No income tax, and lots of businesses are moving here, especially if the environment for self-employed taxes kind of continue to increase in other states. Other businesses will continue to move here. I know a lot of businesses have moved to Texas for the same reason.
Right.
So again, we don't have a crystal ball. Things are going to happen. Our prediction and our educated guess, 20 years of being in the business in the Central Florida area, and that is some small market corrections, probably no major crashes, because of the people continuing to move, because the economic data for Florida puts us right in the middle of the pack at one of the most desirable places in the country to live right now. So, we're still seeing people from all over the country, right, Amanda, all over the country looking to move here, even during a hurricane. Matter of fact, our lead count went up during the week that the hurricane was here. So I don't think it discouraged too many people.
I mean, we have hurricanes here sometimes. It's not all the time, and it is awful when it happens, but we get through it.
Yeah, I mean, California had earthquakes for as long as California's been there, and it didn't stop people from moving there in the 60s and 70s and 80s.
And today. Yeah.
Well, actually, California is the number one spot for people to be moving out of today, but it's not due to earthquakes, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a whole other video.
So although Florida is not immune to all of the potential market volatility of rising rates, Hurricane Ian, inflation, we gave some of the reasons why we do believe it's a little insulated. So what do we do moving forward, Amanda? So 2022 and beyond, what do we have to look forward to? What are some of the changes we're going to see? How do we get ahead of everything?
Well, that's a great question. I think my call to action for real estate professionals out there is to remember that your duty and your responsibility is to be an educated professional for your buyers and sellers. Let them know the consequences of pretty much any action out there that will encompass real estate. But also the benefits of home ownership outweigh any rent that is out there. And home ownership is something that you don't necessarily go into lightly. Remember back in 2008 when it was literally available for everyone without any kind of backup. That's what we experienced. But we don't experience that anymore because it is something that something you have to work hard for. And so people, put their blood, sweat, and tears into it. And so again, you control your environment by owning. And as a real estate professional, you teach your clients for life, the benefits of home ownership.
I think that's one thing we need to do moving forward in 2022 and on is we need to become better stewards of our industry. Let's continue. Let's do a better job educating consumers. Again, not everybody is in the right place in their life to purchase a home. But when you are in the right place in life to purchase a home, don't allow these things that we're hearing, the sky is falling, to stop you. Talk to a local professional. Every market's unique. Every market's different. Talk to a realtor that works the market you're in. Talk to a local lender. Look at your financial situation. Compare that mortgage payment or that living situation to paying rent or living at mom's house. Let's take a look at some of these things, but being better stewards as professional and educating our clients and giving them good recommendations. Our industry is not about pushing people into homes. Our industry is about educating people, as Amanda just said.
And being of service.
Yeah, the beautiful and wonderful benefits of home ownership. And if it's that time for them, then let's put them in a home. But it's not going to be that time for everybody.
Exactly. And again, if you're unsure of what your particular market is doing, I definitely recommend actually picking up the phone and calling or walking into one of their offices of a local real estate and or mortgage professional and get some actual numbers, not something that's just out there spiraling out and the media.
Google is great, but it does not replace.
It's awful at the same time.
Yeah, we all know how much our doctors love for us to walk in there.
So sorry, Dr.
and tell them all the stuff we read on WebMD.
Yes.
Listen,
I'm pretty sure I had the plague, by the way.
There's a reason the doctor went to school for 20 years. There's a reason that Amanda and I have been in this industry for 20 years. Mm-hmm. It's because we have lots of knowledge as we eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. Right. So again, go talk to a local professional. Do everything you can. If you want to keep up on all the great, wonderful things about real estate, mortgages, the industry as a whole, we encourage you to like and subscribe to our page. Tons of good information, everything from mortgage stuff to real estate predictions like this. We educate you on all different facets of real estate. Everything from if you're in the industry and you want to learn more, or you're just somebody looking to buy or sell.
A consumer that wants more information. And don't forget to hit that little bell so you'll get a notification when we have new great info. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We don't have a crystal ball, but we got a pretty good feeling, and I think we're going to be all right.
Yeah, thank you.